Ricki Zebik is an operations director with vast experience in pharmaceutical manufacturing. He actually now earns a living from utilising all his experience in improving manufacturing companies across the UK. This episode offers a real insight into exactly how companies improve by utilising the staff and ideas they already have within the business. Culture is probably the most important aspect of any business and has never been more important than it is right now. In this episode, Ricki talks about how companies improve and what they need to do to turn it around. Thank you, Ricki, for this fantastic episode. I hope you enjoy. So, Ricki, welcome to the Manufacturing Leads podcast. Pleasure to have you on.
Yeah, thank you. We've been talking about it for a while, haven't we?
We have been doing it, yes, and I'm over the moon. I can't wait for it. So, same question as I always ask. What does it mean to you to be a leader?
I think a big part for me is enabling people to enjoy what they're doing, fulfill their full potential. I think when you look at the human race, for instance, it's continually evolved from day one. History shows that. I believe people want to achieve and push boundaries, and being a leader allows you to facilitate that, by creating an environment whereby people can thrive. I think without leaders, evolution and improvement, certainly in business, can become a bit muddy. I don't think a normal everyday person has the drive required to really achieve. And I think if you compare that to like a personal trainer at the gym, that takes you to the next level, sort of thing. That there's so much you can do yourself, but then you need someone to help and facilitate and support. And I think as a leader, that's what we do.
Yeah, I like that actually. I really like the enable and facilitate. It's never been said before, because it's tricky then, because I guess different people will need different support, and good managers can probably quickly find out how much support they need to give. It's one of those, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. So look, let's dig around from right from the start, if you don't mind. So I'll be keen to know where it all started. Manufacturing is either something you've always wanted to get into, or you fell into. What the early days? How did you get into it initially?
Yeah, so I fell into it, to be honest, because I was in a job that I didn't really enjoy and wanted to get out. I left school and did a few bits and bobs. Did a 2-year traineeship. Then I worked in quality control of all areas, working shifts over a 7-day week, and it just wasn't. Being kind of 1920, working on a Friday and Saturday night didn't really fit with a lifestyle. So a job came up, working in pharmaceutical and manufacturing. At the time, the salary was decent, the opportunity was decent, and decided to take it. And ended up in manufacturing that way.
Nice. So what were you doing then? What was the first roles you did then?
So I went and worked for a company called Eldon Laboratories. They're a specials manufacturer. So just went in as a technician, manufacturing, one-off bespoke medicines on a daily basis.
Can you remember thinking, because like you say, you were in a job you didn't like, do you remember thinking at the time, this is it? Or did it sort of gradually sort of transpire for you that this was it?
No, so it was a gradual thing. So at that point, it was still kind of a means to an end, like living during the week so I could enjoy the weekend. But no, I think given what it was, we were manufacturing individual bespoke medicines for people who couldn't take an off-the-shelf licensed product. So there was that, at that stage, there was that sense of satisfaction in knowing that actually what you were doing was at least making someone's life a bit more comfortable or tolerable. And it wasn't until that business was bought out by a competitor and relocated down to Essex that 4 of the senior managers there created their own business in the Northeast to rival.
Right, nice. I was going to ask you this later anyway, so I'll ask you to sort of segue in nicely. But you've obviously worked in manufacturing, pharmaceutical manufacturing, much of all your life, and a lot of people work in manufacturing and they just manufacture parts for whatever. Do you know what I mean? So there's necessarily no sort of part of a greater good there. Whereas you mentioned it, you are. Do you know what I mean? Like from you're actually helping manufacture something which is changing lives. How much do you think that is a driver for you and driver people who work in that sector, would you say, typically?
Yeah, I think certainly it's a funny one. So I think what I found is when I got into management, it's a lot more prevalent in what you do and how important it is. You do have that sense when I was a technician manufacturing, but it's difficult because you're in a clean room, you're surrounded by white walls and white lights, and it's a bit of a production line. So you're manufacturing one product and then the next and then the next, and it does become a bit repetitive. So you do understand what you're doing, but it does become a bit kind of production line-esque, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
It's not until kind of got to a senior position where I was a bit more outward facing and would have those interactions with pharmacists and hospitals and things like that, where you realize actually this is making a massive difference to people's lives.
Do you think, and you've worked for a few different companies, do you think that's almost on the company to share that why and that message with everyone involved? Because obviously everyone plays the part in it, but like you say, they probably don't see anywhere near the end result. So
Yeah.
have you seen a difference in good companies do that versus companies where you're just a number and you can be replaced quite easy?
I think so, but I think this is why culture is really important in a business, and making sure that everyone knows what the company is trying to achieve or the organization is trying to achieve, and that it's not just pile as many medicines out the door as possible to rake in income. It's genuinely to provide a service for people who can't access medicines that that need them.
Yeah, 100%. Exactly that. And like you say, if the culture's right and people are part of that, they understand everything. And
Exactly.
what's the best? Because you're seeing it both sides of it. How do you do that? Do you know what I mean? Like, how have you seen companies do that the right way? Would you say?
So a lot of it, it's around engagement with staff. So there's a number of things for me. So environment's a big thing. So making people feel comfortable at work. No one wants to come to work. They're there 8, 9, 10 hours a day. Work's an escape for some people from personal lives. So the last thing they want to be doing is coming into work and being in a highly stressful environment. So the environment is an important thing, whether it's breakout areas or I'm a firm believer if the place looks good, people feel good. You don't want to be in a building that's fallen to bits. If it's invested in, then people feel that they're invested in. And then it goes without saying, obviously, communication's huge. I'm a big fan of like town hall meetings and things like that, reporting on how the business is doing and what the impact is on the customer. A place where I used to work had a board on the wall, and every time we had a success story or a good feedback from a customer, it would be printed off and it would be put up for everyone to see. So that kind of hit home that we're not just putting things in little brown bottles and sending them out. We're helping people improve their lives. And then I think there's obviously like values and behaviours are a big cornerstone of manufacturing, and certainly in pharma. It should be embedded in everything that's done, and should be measurable, and people's feedback and performance is all linked into that. So yeah, and it's that whole mentality of if we win together, when we fail together, sort of thing.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I love the engagement piece there.
Yeah,
it doesn't matter what the product is and what you're doing. People have got to feel happy, haven't they? They've got to feel happy. They've got to feel valued, I guess, 100%. And I've seen so many different, some companies do that really well and not so well. Have you seen that change, would you say, over time, the importance of that?
It's a definitely, funny enough, yeah. So I was just talking to someone the other day, and it sounds like a lot of businesses are employing dedicated people for the engagement piece.
Yeah.
Whereas I think when I think back 20 years ago, it certainly was a case of, do your job and shut your mouth sort of thing.
Yeah.
Where now there's a lot of empowerment, which I firmly believe in, empowerment of people and getting people involved in all aspects of the business. And yeah, the engagement bit, what makes people tick and how do you retain talent in your business and all that kind of stuff. I think it's massive. Yeah, definitely nowadays.
Why do you think that is? Do you think people have just changed over time, or do you think there's right now there's a supply and demand issue and people know that they're in demand, so they can demand a little bit more? Do you think that is the case, or have people just changed as we've sort of evolved to some extent?
You know what? I'm not sure, to be honest. So for me, I think when I first got into management, so I got into management at quite a young age. I was 23 years old, and right place, right time. I think I was probably a cheap option rather than bring in someone established. But at the same time, I got the freedom to learn and develop. So it was a win-win. I think being that young age, something I really struggled was the age and having to tell people older than myself on this is what we're going to do and this is how it's going to work and things like that. And I was going to say embarrassingly so, but no, I'm not embarrassed about it. I avoided those situations at times and avoided conflict being that age and not being confident enough to deal with it, but also being smart enough to know, well, I can't ignore that something needs to be done. So I then got into, right, so how do I get what I want out of this situation, and how does this person get what they want without have to have that conflict or awkward conversation. I think that's where I kind of started tapping into the whole engagement and what makes people, make people tick, and the motivation part. Um, so I don't know if it's just happened, or certainly from my perspective, it's something which I've noticed over 20 years. I've got better reactions from people, and people have developed when having those more collaborative conversations rather than do this and do as you're told, or this is what we're doing, and there's no conversation to be had.
Yeah, yeah. I found that really interesting. Like you say, you've obviously developed that almost like that emotional intelligence over time, but also, like you say, understanding why people tick and what makes them tick. Because to make someone change, you've got to understand why they want to change in the first place, haven't you?
Well, that's it. And I think you look inwards a bit as well. So I'm the kind where if someone has a problem and they sit down with me and they want to talk about it, and how do we fix this, and who do we need to get involved, and that kind of approach, I'm excited by it. Whereas if it's the opposite, where someone stood in front of a team of 10 shouting and bawling, saying this isn't good enough, everyone's going to lose their jobs if this doesn't improve, it turns people off, in my opinion. And yeah, just I think that whole understanding how people work and how to get the best out of them works for everyone.
Yeah, completely agree. So yeah, let's go back to that. So 23, that was first
Yeah.
gig of management. So, and that was, like saying, just an opportunity that rose, and then
Yeah, so it was after Ellen Laboratories had closed down. So Quantum Specials, which is now Quantum Pharmaceutical, came to light. Um, there was a gap in the market. So specials at the time there was like a 2-3 week lead time from point of order. So the four guys who started Quantum were very much, if we can do this next day or 2 to 3 days, then there's an opportunity. There's an opportunity here. And secondly, you've got all these people who are waiting for medicines that they can't go to a pharmacy and just get it there and then, like you do with a prescription. It's got to be ordered and manufactured, and they're having to wait 2 or 3 weeks for it, and it's not good enough. So they went in really hard in terms of, right, we're going to have this model where we're going to take an order today, it's going to be manufactured today, and it's going to be in a pharmacy or in a hospital or a care home tomorrow. So it grew, so it took off, and it grew so quick. We had a clean room which was the size of a standard living room. Very quickly we were working shift patterns because everyone wouldn't fit in. And yeah, the business grew. And one of the guys who owned the business, I remember him just saying, it was funny enough, at a Christmas party, he just said, look, there's opportunities if people want them. And at that point, being early 20s, I was like, I can't keep living for the weekend and I need to think about what I'm going to do with my life. And just thought, you know what, I enjoy what I do. I get the importance of what we do. Let's have a go. And yeah, right place, right time, and it seemed to take off.
Did you, at the time, did you remember thinking, I've actually got to manage someone? Do you know what I mean? Was it more of a case of, I just want to progress in my own career and this is the way to do it? Or did you how much thought process do you have behind, actually, I'm going to have to help someone here and manage them?
Yeah.
It's different, isn't it?
So naively, no. So I've worked with people so a lot of people from Eldon Laboratories came over who I'd worked with for 3-4 years before. So I just thought this was going to be really easy because I'm friends with all these people.
Yeah.
And yeah, got on with them, and no one will say, oh, I don't agree and I don't agree with that. But yeah, I very quickly found that you kind of take a step over a line, so to speak, and the perception of you becomes very different.
Yeah, it's a different challenge completely, isn't it? Actually, I mean, suddenly, you're friends with someone, then you've got to manage people, and then it's a completely different kind of fish. How difficult was that starting out? Then, did you come across some issues here and there?
Yeah, nothing major, just more so kind of confidence issues, because I very naively thought I'll be able to sit down with these people and say, right, this is what we're going to do, and everyone will just toddle off and do it. But it wasn't like that. And then all of a sudden you find yourself in positions where people are talking back to you, and you're not, and I was never prepared to have an answer. So I had a lot of confidence issues in the early days. And again, that was one of the reasons why it was, and at that point, being 23 and not having the confidence that I have now and the experience and knowledge I have now, I can't go toe to toe with these people, so I'm going to have to find a different way. How do I motivate them? How do I tap in? And then that's where kind of the friend link worked, because I knew them. So yeah, so very quickly found a way, different individuals getting, knowing each of them and what motivates and what works with each of them to get around that. And it worked. And I've just kind of gone from there. It's worked for the last 20 years. Like, it don't get us wrong, uncomfortable conversations need to be have, and I'll quite happily have them now, because I've got that knowledge and experience and whatnot. But yeah, certainly at that point it was quite scary. Yeah.
It's probably obvious the advice you'd give yourself now, because you mentioned it, but what advice do you think you would give more experienced managers who are managing you at 23 to manage? Because that's, again, to manage someone who's managing the first time is difficult, and they might not have the same hindsight that you have. Do you think there's things to look out for? Because not every manager is going to put their hand up and say, I'm struggling here, because you want to try and press, because it's your first time, isn't it? So any advice there?
Yeah, so God, I'd say, listen to people. Certainly at that age bracket, there's a lot of people who don't quite know what they want to do and where they want to go, who are in the position that I was in. Yeah. And you're being told what to do on a daily basis, so you do it until either you have enough, you have enough of it, or you say you're light or an opportunity arises. I think it's important at that age, and even younger, even straight out of school, if people are coming on from that age, to have the conversation on what is it you want to do, what do you enjoy doing, what don't you enjoy doing, and I'm not saying like just give them work to do that they want to do. It's getting that balance and making them well rounded and developing them. And I think that's where the future leaders will come from.
Yeah, 100%. Do you think? I mean, who were you influenced by? Would you say in those early days, management wise? It might be work or out of work.
So it's so certainly in work. So God, I hope he's not going to listen to this.
I'll tag him.
So yeah, so I've been lucky enough to work with some really, really good people. Learned a lot, lots of different management styles. But I think when I went into Quantum and got given that opportunity, so one of the founding members was a guy called Andy Patterson, and he looked at that for the operational side, and he was one who was like, "Look, there's opportunities here." So I remember talking to him, and he was like, "Look, if you want to go for it, then let's do it." I'd go through obviously recruitment process, got given the opportunity. And there's two interactions I remember, and I think about them all the time in different situations. Is he said that the best way for you to find your management style is the people around you. So he was like, look at me, the things that you like, take, and the things you don't like, leave. And he's not like this, but I've probably left a lot more than what I've taken from him. But that's how you mold yourself. And the other part was when we got into budget, and I remember doing the first budget, and I'm saying, tell us what you need and how much money you need to spend, but just remember 60 pence of every pound you spend is my money. And it hit home. It obviously was a majority shareholder and whatnot, but it hit home the importance of budgeting, because it's not just, it's not a blank checkbook. And in a lot of cases, certainly nowadays, post COVID and things like that, businesses are struggling. So it's about saving money. Yeah. So that really switched us on. So whenever I go through budgeting, that his face and those words coming out of his mouth always hit home, and it works. It's every year for the last 20 years, I've recited that line to myself.
I like that. Yeah, and I'm sure you'll pass that on to other people every time they're doing your budget. Yeah. And I mean, outside influences, I think you draw upon these, throughout your career. Is there any obvious influences or in your career? What do you say so far? So outside of work?
Yeah, so I think probably everyone says this, but and I don't think he knows either. I probably need to tell him, but my dad was a massive influence. So he left school at 16, worked on building sites. He was a scaffolder for God knows how many years when I was growing up. He would go out to work before I got up in the morning and went to school, and he'd be in late at night. Sometimes I wouldn't see him. He'd work overtime at weekends just so that, as a family, we could have a holiday, we had a car, we had a house, that kind of thing. So it's a double-edged sword. So I didn't see a great deal of them growing up. Don't get us wrong, lots of good memories and things like that. But the work ethic part certainly is what I took from him. That you don't get anything for nothing. in the world, and if you want to achieve or you want things or whatever it is, you've got to work hard and earn them. So yeah, definitely that.
How concerned do you think it is that it's almost dying out? Do you know what I mean? Because my dad was the same, and so many people have come in here and said that. And I think, don't be wrong, there's different ways of doing things now, potentially to get the same result. I think there's elements to work smarter, not longer to some extent. But there's something in that, though, isn't it? That you see that if you see that work ethic that it's instilled into you, I see that slowly dying out. Do you know what I mean? As it's almost get diluted. How concerned do you think the generations coming through that it might not have the same sort of, I don't know, that same ethic, same gumption that we've potentially have seen through the years? What do you say?
Yeah, God, it's I suppose it's worrying on the surface. I think something I've noticed, and this isn't taking anything away from anyone, but everything you see online at the minute on social media is ways to make money quick and easy, whether it's through drop shipping or YouTube channels. And don't get us wrong, I'm sure people put a lot of work and a lot of time and money into it. But that I don't know, that old school work ethic of you've got to grind from 9 to 5, and you've got to put the overtime in, and you've got to earn your crust and earn your trade. Yeah, it's I don't think it's as prevalent as what it was.
Yeah,
it was years ago. Yeah.
No.
And it's a shame, because I think, again, going back to the evolution part, that's how businesses improve and organizations improve. And yeah, don't get us wrong, it's a social media age. That's a massive outlet and a massive source of revenue and income for businesses. But link the two together, and God knows what can happen.
Apologies for interrupting this podcast for a very quick 30-second pitch of my business. Theo James are a specialist manufacturing and engineering recruitment search firm based in Seaham in the Northeast. If you're looking for any staff or a new opportunity yourself, from a semi-skilled level right the way up to C-suite executive, then please get in touch. We have a specialist consultant in each discipline ready to help. I'm extremely proud of what we've built over the years, and I'd love to extend that service out to you. Thank you. Enjoy the podcast. So as your career moved on, obviously, you became more senior. Was it quite a natural, organic process for you, or were you always trying to make sure you progress yourself as you move upwards? Would you say?
It's a bit of both. So as Quantum grew, it grew bigger. Got moved to a new site, opened a second site, opened a place in Southern Ireland. And yeah, so I think, again, luckily I kind of developed and grew at the same rate that the business did. And as it diversified, then obviously my opportunity to develop and learn did so. And then, so I think, I was at Quantum for 10 years. I think the last 3 years I did the same kind of role. So I was looking after non-steroid production, the warehouse and distribution. And I never really had that until then. I never really had that. This is where I want to go. I never thought I would even get into a management position. It kind of happened overnight and by chance is when I kind of thought I want to see what I'm capable of. And that's why I decided to leave kind of Quantum after 10 years. Yeah,
it's a big move, I guess, that. And we talk about confidence and mindset and stuff. That must have been quite a daunting experience. 10 years, it's a long, long time moving to a new role. How did you manage your mindset behind that then, would you say?
So it's funny, because at the point where I was like, right, this is it, I'm leaving, and I'm going to go into something else, you've kind of got no fear. And then I had a gap between leaving and my next role of 5 months. And in those 5 months, every negative thought goes through your mind of, actually, everything I've learned, is it transferable? What if this is all I know? What if I can't take it to another business? And you apply for jobs and you don't hear anything back, and you're suddenly thinking, what have I done? I should have stayed there. And but no, and then I remember getting my next role, which was a big change. It was in Swindon, so I was commuting from Newcastle every week, which was a 4.5, 5 hour drive. Sometimes on a Friday night, wasn't getting in until midnight. But very quickly, I actually realised that what I had learned and the skills I developed over the 10 years were actually quite good and quite strong. And my fear was I would go into the new business and and people would be like, he doesn't know what he's talking about. But actually, it was the opposite. And then straight away, you get that lift, you get that confidence boost, and you don't look back.
Yeah, and I think, like you say, if you are, if you are taken into, I personally think it's harder going into a new role. It's harder going to a role within the same business to some extent because there's almost more pressure than a new role where no one knows you and you've actually brought in to do that job because they've decided you are qualified for that job. But is that fair, Woody? Have you found that, would you say?
Yeah, I think so. And I think so when I moved from Quantum, so I went to Patheon then, who's now Thermo Fisher, and it was the complete opposite. So I went from doing individual bespoke medicines, which were, creams and ointments and solution suspensions up to, say, 500 mil. Went to set up a brand new facility manufacturing a bulk product. So we were producing 25,000 vials in a batch. The market values was millions and millions of dollars for the US market. So so when I got in there, the whole thing around the facility design and the build and setting up procedures and SOPs and building a team, no problem with that. But when it come to the equipment and the processes around the manufacturing was a bit, was daunting.
Yeah, I bet it was. And mindset wise, managing is stressful and managing a team is stressful. You mentioned when you're 23 and the confidence side and that, I guess you've learned over the years how to deal with situations. How nerve-wracking now is management and managing a team? Because I still find it nerve-wracking every day, I would say.
I think, God, it is. And it's weird. You think you know how to deal with every situation, but every week there's something which you've never come across.
Yeah.
It'll crop up, and you do need that time to reflect around how do I approach this, or did I approach it right, and whatnot. And I think you've got to be aware of perception of how people perceive you, because I think it's completely right. If you're stressed and you're huffy and you're angry, it reflects. I think people look toward managers and line leaders at right. This is a stressful time. How are them reacting? So you've got to kind of stay calm, but also be wary that you don't want to come across too laid back because there is a sense of urgency in things.
Yeah.
So it's around getting that balance. But again, I think it comes down to the culture and getting to know the people who are around you and what management styles work for them.
Yeah. And like you say, I think everything does come back to the culture, and the management set the culture for me. It has to come that way. And obviously now when you're in your role, where obviously you're working with companies is slightly different. Is that something? Are you looking specifically on the culture side? What are the key things you look at which are going to turn a business and is going to improve a business? What do you say?
So definitely the culture bit. I mean, you can, like if I go into a new role, I look at capability and performance, but it's based on how things currently are at that point when you walk through the door, and then naturally any leader that comes in will change things or tweak things to how them think it needs to work, and that all has an impact on performance and capability. So whilst it's important, I think the culture bit, you need to set that tone from day one and really understand where the business is and where you want it to be, or where even the owners of the business want it to be. Certainly the last couple of roles I've had have been around culture and changing that and improving it. And then once you kind of do that and you're looking at the performance and you're looking at metrics, you see that reflect.
Okay.
And it's weird. It's rather than kind of pinpointing it, I don't know if there's a misperformance in a certain area, rather than going at it, pinpointing. Normally it's the softer stuff around the outside, like making sure that the people are comfortable or they know what they're doing or they've got the right tools to do the job, which changes that. And I think when you go straight in at something, you miss that part. You're looking at processes, or you're looking for fault somewhere. And don't get us wrong, it is that from time to time, but it's not always that.
Yeah, and so good advice. So what advice would you give a company who, let's say, the management and the senior leaders kind of know something's not right, and retention is difficult, they find it hard to attract people, they probably haven't got the luxury of bringing on at this stage a head of people, head of culture type capacity, but they know they need to get something moving. What's the first thing, the first steps you think they should take to try to start to tackle any issues we've got, would you say?
They need to talk to the people.
Okay.
And I know that's quite broad, but if we're talking generally, a business wants to change the culture, understand from the people what it is that they like, what they don't like, what's working, what's not working. And again, it's not about giving people what they want, it's understanding, and then you can line that up against where the business wants to go and how the business wants to work, and where the commonalities are, then let's focus on that. I can't think of any examples off my head, but if it's things like people don't enjoy coming into work because there's no social breakout spaces, for instance. They just feel like they're sat at the desk for 10 hours a day and they don't talk to people. In creating a social environment, whether it's a canteen or a centralized area where they can go and have 15 minutes on the break and talk to people about what they were doing at the weekend or whatever, that can make a massive difference to someone's perception of coming into work.
Yeah. I think just being asked is probably the biggest start, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, for a lot of these companies, a lot of these employees, they've probably just never been asked before. It's probably, you know what I mean? The fact that actually suddenly they've got a voice and their voice creates some form of change, that alone is going to generate a slightly increased level of happiness, I'd imagine. And because manufacturing is still it's definitely changing, but it's still quite archaic. You know what I mean? It's still quite unionized, and unions have got the place. But yeah, it's a lot of companies are still quite old school, I find, in their mentality. And it's almost, it is a scary step giving people a voice, I think. And we, you know, we give people a voice a lot, and sometimes I think, do we give too much of a voice? Do you know what I mean? Like, where's the line between me and them? And that's a challenge. Be transparent. So but yeah, I massively resonate with it, because the best things that have happened here, the best changes we've made, have come from them every single time.
I think the bit that stands out for me with giving people that voice is that it's a best case scenario. Someone's going to tell you something you don't know about your business, and you can put it right, or you can improve it, or you can retain someone, or whatever it is, or you can attract more people to come and work there. Worst case, you hear something that isn't quite right, or the business can't do for the individual because it's outlandish or whatever it is. But even just by sitting back down and explaining why that request or that idea or that thought can't be progressed, sometimes that, or the majority of times, that's enough for the individual. They've been listened to, and the fact that you've had a conversation to say, I'm really sorry on this occasion, they'll go away thinking, well, at least I've been listened to, and the person's gone away and they've thought about it and they've explained why we can't do that, or we can't do this. I think from having those conversations, I just don't see how much negative, can come from it.
And I think what you see, you're right what you said before, that I think when senior leaders and most people own businesses probably think, right, if we're not making enough money, or it's, whatever, we've got downtime, whatever it is, they'll go to black and white process straight away, because they think that's the quick win. Yeah. They'll probably think, what's the time in asking the people? But actually, it all comes from your people, everything, doesn't it? Right. If you can nail that, then they are the people that control the processes. And I think it's probably just changing that mindset, I guess, isn't it? That actually it comes from your people, not necessarily your processes all the time.
I think times have changed now from when one person sat behind a desk can solve every problem on a site. I firmly believe the answers to all the problems are somewhere on a site. Normally it's with the people who are doing the jobs, or doing the role. And it may just take someone, in a leadership position just to unlock that. And even just a simple conversation around, look, we're having a problem with this product. The quality is poor. It's failing quality control checks. What's your thoughts? And if it's actually the manufacturing process is really complicated, we could simplify it doing this. Or actually, we've noticed the materials we're getting in now are really poor quality. And that's stuff that you don't notice. I don't notice that behind the desk, and I'm not going to pretend to notice it. But there are people within the site or within the business who know these things, and without having that conversation, you're never going to find it out.
Yeah, completely agree. Obviously, you worked in manufacturing for a long time. How much have you seen manufacturing change over that period of time? You think about, your first day to now. How much do you think this sector itself has changed? Would you say, for the better or worse?
So I think there's definitely been massive technological advancements. So, and I mean, a lot of my background specials, and it is still very labour intensive. very manual. But certainly in general, you look at some pharma companies, and not just pharma companies, just, I was lucky enough to go to Toyota and have a look around Toyota, and the production lines, and they're phenomenal, where, like, the operators don't need to take a step sideways or backwards, everything, and it's moving along on a conveyor, and it's all around the whole, like, the lean processes and making the job as easy as possible for people, and things like that. And I know the whole, like, not talking about lean in specific, but that's been around a long time. But I just think in general, that whole automation and technological advances are changing manufacturing.
Yeah, and Toyota's a good example, isn't it? And most automotive firms of that stage are good examples because they seem to have the process nailed down. Why can't everyone replicate that? Is it a cost thing? Is it easier in some disciplines within manufacturing or not? Because Toyota are often mentioned, and these are processes that should be transferable to steel, to food, to pharma. Do you know what I mean? How can we replicate that into other smaller firms, for example?
Yeah, I think, God, it's a good question. I think it depends. I think now when you get businesses popping up, and maybe I'm answering the question by saying I don't know if we can, but you either replicate and offer a product or a service, or a product in this instance that other people are offering, so therefore you can copy it. But the only way you're successful at that is if you do it quicker, you do it cheaper, or you do it better, for instance.
Yeah.
But the other option is you find a niche which no one else is doing. And the difficulty with that is if you're manufacturing something that is niche, there's probably not the automation or the technology out there to support.
Yeah.
And then you're in that kind of development phase where you have to find someone who can, this is my process. Can you automate this? And that takes time and money and development. And certainly for startups, it's probably not readily available, that kind of money.
It'll be interesting to see what technology and automation, particularly automation, does for manufacturing. They had an MD of an amazing guy, Atif Syed. He's only 31, and he owns a business called Woodsano, and they basically made dexterous robots. So that right now they work specifically within vegetables and fruits, and they can essentially pick grapes up and also feel how sort of best by dates and amazing stuff. And I was amazed by the cost. Basically, the cost of one right now, even right now, is about 24 grand. So that you're paying for 1 year's salary, and they can do the job so much quicker, more efficient, better. No holidays, no sick days, and that's the argument, are they replacing people? But I don't think so. I think the skills has changed because you need people to work with these robots. But that's the impact that could have on manufacturing is unbelievable. If we can work engaging with them, I think could be mega, that, couldn't it?
Yeah, and it's a good point. That I agree with the whole. It's not taking jobs away from people. It's moving them, because certainly, like we'd said about the whole social media thing, it's that didn't exist.
Yeah.
20 years, well, probably 10 years ago, to the extent it exists now, where every business has a social media person, and like we're talking about engagement and things like that. Companies would employ people on a production line 10, 15, 20 years ago. And you're right that it's now being redeployed, where it's actually we can spend money on technology and automate, and yeah, like you said, no sick days. Arguably, you've got better quality product, less mistakes, less waste, all that kind of thing. And then maybe that's why the whole social media things popping off and it's so big.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Right, I've got some quick fire-ish questions for you, Ricki, if that's all right. What 3 things make a good leader? Can we 3 things, 3 words? Anything you say?
So I'd say trust your people, and we've spoke about this. Listen to them, see what they've got to say, and most importantly, let them develop. Allow them to make mistakes, obviously within reason and not repeatedly. But if someone has an idea, then let's and it seems to work, let's do it. And if it doesn't work, well, there's a lesson there. We'll move on to the next one. And that probably feeds onto the next one. Don't be afraid of making mistakes. I think that certainly as a leader, and I felt that, I'd said about the whole conflict and managing people who were older in age. Don't be afraid of making mistakes. If you get something wrong, then dust yourself down, and you won't do it again, because you learn from it. And then I'd say probably trust yourself. Like listen to your gut. Don't let the mind overthink and start questioning what you were going to do. You know, like be humble and don't take yourself too seriously, but trust yourself.
You like that, and you're right. It's almost like transparency, and then it's getting that level right, isn't it, of transparency versus having the confidence to make decisions, a bit humble about if they don't go wrong, and hold your hand up and say this one wasn't right, but I've learned X, Y, and Z. So no, I really like that. What's more important to you, would you say? Because there's always a big debate around this: the academic route or on the job learning into management.
I don't think it matters, to be honest. I think it's down to the individual and how they apply themselves. So I'm operations, so I'm probably a typical operations person. Put me in a classroom with a big screen in front of us, and it's not going to go in.
Yeah.
But put us in a clean room, in a facility, on a production line where I can see and feel and hear everything. I'll pick it up straight away. So for me, on the job learning is what makes me tick and what makes me develop. But equally, there's people who that doesn't quite work for.
Yeah.
So the academic route's the right route for them. So I'm very conscious I'm sat right on the fence with this one, but I genuinely think that.
Well, I'll prod you even more then. If you think of the best managers you've had, right, because you have their names here, versus the worst managers you've had, which of those have the majority of the better ones been more people who could roll the sleeves up and you knew they could, or they're more the academic route? So we'll go with their percentage.
So certainly more on the job learning side, but I work for a fantastic guy at Quotient Sciences in Nottingham, Andy Lewis, who had a PhD, so very academic and just really nice bloke, really good leader. So yeah, works both ways.
Kept you on the fence, yeah. No, good answer, mate.
I don't want to offend anyone.
The other one I've already answered, which is well, actually, I'll ask you again. How do we improve manufacturing? Talk about how it changes. If you could do one thing to improve manufacturing overnight, what would it be? He's got some challenges right now. I would say probably more challenges that he's probably ever had to some extent. Has had for a long time. What do you think is one thing that we could do, or magic wand stuff to help it?
God, you put us right on the spot with that. God, I've got no idea. I think, funny enough, I was reading the other day, so there's over 200 or just under 250 manufacturing businesses in the UK.
Yeah.
So kind of going back to the people part, that's a lot of people who have a lot of ideas and a lot of ambition that can change the way manufacturing is. So I'm probably not answering your question directly in terms of solving it overnight, but again, going back to the people around, really getting to know the people, letting them have a voice, understanding what's working and what's not working, and results will come. Certainly in struggling businesses, results will come.
Yeah, no, I like the answer, and it 100% resonates, because this is sort of stuff I think not everyone thinks about. Do you know what I mean? Because often the answer's right in front of you.
Yeah,
that's the whole point, isn't it? You don't have to tweak your budget for this type of stuff. It's right there, and you might not be utilising it. So I think it's a really good answer.
That's probably why I feel so strongly about it, because I've been in that position where something's been missed or something's been changed, and then someone's went, "Oh yeah, I knew about that.
Yeah,
I knew about that 6 months ago." And you're like, if I just
tell us
down and says, and a lot of it's around, the culture's not right, where people don't want to stand up and say, I'm not happy with this, or this could be better, or that could be better. Again, whether it's a historical thing where managers made all the decisions and managers knew everything best because they were senior people in the business. I don't know, but it just doesn't work nowadays.
I think I've definitely worked with. So I think some managers almost don't like suggestions because they think it's their job to come with suggestions. Do you know what I mean? Which is the complete opposite mentality. So you go back to changing the people. Like you say, if you can just change that mentality, then 100%, because people need to feel safe to have suggestions. They just do, because it's almost like to have a suggestion, you're almost, it's not a complaint, but you're almost saying something's not good enough. And that takes
as well. Yeah, I mean, you'll probably see it in recruitment. for me, if you're building a team, then you want to build a team of skill with a skill set.
Mm-hmm.
And normally that means that you've got to bring people in who have things you don't.
Yeah.
I think there's still managers out there who are reluctant to do that because they see it as a weakness, but you need to take that step back and go, well, collectively as a team of 5 or 10, we have a skill set that can solve every problem or deal with every emergency or whatever it is within this team. And yeah, I don't think managers should be afraid that they don't know everything, because they don't have to know everything.
No, exactly that. They don't have to be the best. They just have to delegate the best to make sure they get best out of the team. No, completely agree. Now, this is the final question, which is this is actually, so this is the last guest I had on was a chap called Kevin Holland, who was ops director for Intelligent Steel Solutions in Peterlee. So this is an interesting question because I'm almost might challenge you to answer it, not how you might think you answer it, because the natural answer will be to go on the people side. But let's see if we go. So, what would you consider to be the most important consideration when undertaking business transformation or instigating major changes? I know you're going to answer this.
Asking people. So if I can't talk about people, then certainly the communication side of things. So because the first thing people are going to think is, well, what impact does this have on me? If it's a change in direction or it's diversification, or maybe one part of the business is winding down to grow another part of the business, that communication bit's got to be hit head on. Ensure that obviously within reason, the plans of the business, why the business is going through the transformational change, what the impact's going to be. If there is an impact on people or people are afraid of that, well, how that's going to be counteracted, just to reassure people. Because as soon as you start going through that change, if you've got an employee base that's wobbling, the change is going to be so much harder to make.
Yeah, that's a brilliant answer, because I get that question so much. Do you know what I mean? When you're going through change, no one likes change unless they know how it's going to impact them.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, isn't it? It's the unknown, the uncertainty that kills people massively. And I think it's even like COVID is a good example. You know, almost when people didn't know how the business was going to change, they needed to know whatever the senior people knew, even if that was nothing. And we saw that. It was just any communication was key. Didn't matter what it was, just any communication. Even if there's no news this week, but this is this. That was enough. It's when you're in the dark that scares people, doesn't it? Because your mind starts playing tricks on you.
I think there's an element of, so when it comes to stuff like that, I think, so if there's going to be a big change in a business and it's going to impact people, or people are going to be worried about it, I think you're faced with a situation where the actions you need to undertake are either easy or hard. And I think people are looking and think, that's hard. I know if I've got to go and have a conversation with 50 people and say, this is what we're going to do, I'm going to get grief, I'm going to get questions, I'm going to get, whatever it is. And people will avoid that. But all that does is have a ripple effect. And those people do panic. And chances are they'll probably come kicking your door down anyway, saying, why is no one telling us?
Yeah.
And it's worse. Whereas I think if you change that easy to hard to right and wrong and look at it a different way, yes, it is hard, but the right thing to do is to go and have that conversation, or to make sure that the communication's right and that people know what is happening in the business. Again, you're hitting it head on. So all that rubbish that follows it, if you don't do it, goes away. And again, I think when you sit down, you look at people in the eyes and you explain and you communicate, and that's all they want. They'll leave the room and go, great, I know what I need to know. I can go home tonight and not worry, or whatever it is.
Yeah, exactly that. You can make decisions based on information you know. You can't information you don't know.
Exactly.
So,
yeah.
Look, Ricki, that's a massive. It's been great, and obviously, I always get takeaways are obvious in this, and I think I've learned so much as well in terms of making sure that everyone in the business has a voice, and more importantly has the opportunity to have a voice. Yeah. I think even if I think about my business, I think we're very, very good at giving senior people the opportunity to make decisions. But actually, I'm sat there thinking, do we give the people who have been here 3-4 months a good enough voice? Do you know what I mean? Because actually, they're the people that it's the first impressions, of the business, exactly. That type of stuff. So, I've learned a lot just from listening to that, the importance of that, and it's been great. So, thank you, mate. It's been brilliant. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, you're very welcome. I've enjoyed it. Thank you.